I was like the sideshow, like the two-headed person. I was like oh, here's Tony with the edge. Like, let Tony jump up and down. Let him talk edge. There was no way to make money on it. And there were plenty of businesses that had failed. And so it was just, hey, Tony's just doing another business that will ultimately fail, just like the long line of edgy kind of businesses that were out there.
Hello and welcome to Cool Vector. I'm David Snow, your host. And today we're joined by Tony Grayson. He's the president and general manager of Northstar Enterprise and Defense, which is a division of Northstar Technologies. Many of you know him as the former president of Compass Datacenters. And of course, he is a former commanding officer of a nuclear submarine for the US Navy. And we're going to get into that because there's a connection between that important work and the important work he does in the world of digital infrastructure. We're also joined by my co-hosts and editorial advisors, Phillip Koblence, a veteran of the data center industry with leadership roles at NYI, Critical Ventures, UIA, and of course, he's a co-founder of Nomad Futurist. We're also joined by Nabeel Mahmood. He is a top 10 influencer and a data center infrastructure visionary. He's a board member across several leading public and private companies, and he is a co-founder of Nomad Futurist. The other interesting part is that the three of you know each other well. Tony is involved as well with Nomad Futurist. Well, Tony, thank you so much for coming on Cool Vector. In general, we just want to know your story in the data center industry and where you see it evolving and what makes you excited for the future. But why don't we start with sort of the breaking news, which is that your leadership role at Northstar is relatively recent. You're going to be involved in smaller, faster, modular data centers. Can you define what it is you're working on and talk about how you see these smaller assets playing a large role in the future of the data center industry?
Yeah, so I left Oracle to run an incubated startup with Compass, really to define their modular data center market. We spend a lot of time kind of looking at what we thought the future is going to be. And I know the focus right now is really on the hyperscale, big stuff, but from our perspective, the hyperscale can't keep up with the rate of change on the language model side. Going from 42 kilowatts to 132 kilowatts to 1.5 megawatts or whatever it's going to be. I mean, they want to get to a gigawatt in the next couple of years per rack. I mean, the data center takes 2 years to build. How can you keep up with that? But also, the performance is increasing. It's been doubling every 6 months. The performance of these AI accelerators or GPUs will solve the problem for you. So it's irrelevant if you have more tokens because their performance will double. And, Jensen has a great slide which kind of shows how much energy it takes to make a model. And it's based on Chat GPT-4 of 1.8 trillion tokens. And you can see, the difference between Ampere, to the Blackwell, really what that line is, and it really goes down. So you just don't need as much to solve the problems. And then you add in distributed compute, where basically you're teaching like a child, like that's right, that's wrong. That can be spread over a metro campus. So we're seeing a lot more of distributed compute, even for language models, but the real return for AI will be in inference. And I'm not talking inference like write my term paper for me or, write an email to Nabeel that makes him sound awesome. That kind of stuff. It's more real-time language translation. It's fraud detection. And that all is latency sensitive or it's bandwidth constrained. And so that gets placed close to where the user's at. And so that can't be in a cola. It's going to be in a very specific area where that peer non-reference point. So the point is, what module data centers give you is a very, very quick time to market at a very good cost on something that's easily upgradable instead of taking years. We're deploying right now in 3 to 6 months, for example, on all these deployments we're doing right now. So, it's very easy to flex to a 12-year refresh cycle on GPUs and stretch that into what defense is doing too. And it's the exact same conversation we're having on both sides of it.
I think, just to add to what Tony said, the most important thing that keeps getting forgotten is the fact that we have not built environments that are flexible and scalable at the pace of compute change. So modularity, to me, needs to be thought through as Lego blocks. And that's exactly what Tony is doing. Take, for instance, shipping containers. I mean, they come in 20, 40, and 53 form factors. It's a uniform factor that's easily movable across all the continents. It's a standard deployment, basically. So It gives us the flexibility to move and upgrade, deploy much faster than we've actually ever done so before. Besides the fact that the standardization also helps with the sustainability and the climate initiatives that we continue to talk about, because now we can repurpose this equipment. I mean, they become a hot swappable assets eventually to keep with the pace of the constant move that we have started to see over the last few years.
Yeah, and we even took that a step further. We're building everything out of composite. So that composite was all digital. So it's digital design to 5-axis machines to robots put walls together so we can crank them out. But also they're 100% recyclable. So if you get rid of them, you just recycle them and use them all again in form of composite, and you add some resin and you make a new module out of it.
I could see an entire cottage industry coming out of, wearing pocketbooks that used to be data centers.
Yeah.
In a few years. Look, we have on the front pages of every paper, we have moonshots and Stargate and, these 400 megawatt campuses and multi-gigawatt deployments around the world. It's not even just the country. With that as the lead, what is typical type of deployment that you're seeing for one of your modules? Where does it scale from and to, and what's the kind of sweet spot for the kind of inference-based deployments?
Yeah, well, I think people are playing to what the market wants to hear right now, where bigger is better, but it doesn't necessarily go with the technology, nor does it go with the economics of it. We are seeing, our customers are customers that are coming out of the cloud that want hybrid multi-cloud. They want to control what they have, and that could be a European company that's afraid of the US Cloud Act, or that could be just a company that wants to control their own small language model inside their fence line. We are seeing small language models, so think 4.8 megawatts and less for a Grace Blackwell, which is still $300 and something million. We are seeing agentic AI really start to pick up. So, think manufacturing, quality control, think of hospitals where it's, and this is more of a PPI concern and a bandwidth constraint where they're using, MRIs, where they're using it against a model to look at historical things that would have actually been to compare to what those MRIs are. And some really interesting stuff like real-time language translation, which is basically a rack at the base of each tower with 100 gig backhaul to a period on-ramp point. And that's everywhere. So just one platform, one country could be 10,000 rack units. And it's just the problem that we're going to have to solve. It's not how big can you build? It's how can you build 100,000 of these things just for one platform, place them all around the world, and how do you manage them? I mean, it's a very different problem set.
And when you're talking about within the fence line, are you talking about like someone, X company has their headquarters and they're calling Tony and they're like, we want to manage our own large language models and we have no data center within our office. Can you plunk one of these things in the parking lot?
Yep, exactly. And we're not necessarily the large, we're not talking like the trillion parameters. A lot of people are okay with 1 billion parameters, which cases they want it close, inside a certain latency that they can go hug their servers. They want it inside their patrolled fence line. And a lot of those we're seeing are, 4.8 megawatts and less for those kind of language models.
You alluded to this earlier, Tony, but obviously this is an industry and this is technology that is evolving at, the speed of light. And so, a conversation that we could have yesterday about something could have already become obsolete by today. While you were the president of Compass Datacenters during that period of evolution of the industry and technology, what did you learn?
I was doing the edge stuff back when edge was a naughty word. I remember talking edge and everyone kind of laughed at you and you were kind of like the butt of the joke because everyone's talking bigger is better. And here's little rambly Tony talking about how the edge is coming. We will rise. We were just a little bit ahead of time, to be perfectly honest. And the real problem was the platform just wasn't there. And the platform's now Agentic AI. But, separately, what I learned at Compass was I had a great mentor, good old Chris Crosby, who everyone knows and loves. He actually let me run the business and let me fail a lot to try to figure out how to actually run a business. And so Compass was less about learning how to build data centers and more about how to grow kind of from a technical, from a financial, and from an operational perspective, and learning from one of the best in our industry is what I picked up out of Compass. And was sad to leave it, but we have defense contracts that we're fulfilling, and Compass is Canadian dollars owned, and we can't trust the Canadians. Uh, can't trust.
51st state, Tony. Come on.
Breaking,
I mean,
breaking
you've
news.
watched South
haven't
Park.
we
You can't
voted
trust them.
Yeah,
And
the
so-
flapping heads. Is this called the Terrence and Phillip policy?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're all 8-bit up there. So we had to be sold to a US based company. And so the good thing is we still work hand in hand with Compass on a lot of things where we still use their supply chain, a bunch of stuff and use some of their engineering aspect. And to be honest, I ask Chris a lot of questions still. So that was kind of the learn, but it was good to see, it would have been very hard to run a startup under pressure of trying to make a business profitable. What I got to learn those last 4 years is kind of what I thought the edge was going to be and develop how to really mass customize modular data centers at scale without the pressure of having to make a profit over my head. And that's what Compass really gave me. That's what I've been doing the last 4 years.
I think that's like the pre-revenue discussion that the TV show Silicon Valley had for years.
No revenue. You don't want revenue. Free revenue.
Dude, yeah, you don't want people to know what the actual value of the business is. So,
Yep, no, we are definitely positive, and that's been recent. But I mean, what I really learned, technology doesn't sell. I know it's amazing. We have this awesome module you can control via your phone, but no one's going to pay for that. And so it really comes down to what will people pay for, what makes the most business sense, and what's the ROI, not what you think is cool. And that was tough to learn. I think what I was preaching 4 years ago, I thought was super cool, but it wouldn't have made any money because I thought it was cool. No one else did, and they weren't going to buy it.
We have an awesome outtake from the previous time we attempted this, where we get Tony's real feeling on technology.
If you recall, we tried to test the limits of edge technology by having you join from, I believe, a moving car.
All right,
Hey, Tony, how you doing, Tony?
How you doing, Tony? This stupid line. Fuck technology, man.
Fuck technology. Are you recording this?
Yes, I am. Yes.
I swear to God, it only uses Chrome, and then it kind of uses it, and it doesn't like mobile. So I once again, I apologize.
We are going to reschedule.
The question is, does technology control us, or we control technology and on a business side? And I think we often get it wrong.
One of the reasons we started this platform, and to a certain extent, even the Nomad Futurist platform, is this concept of trying to understand that 30,000 foot view. And one of the things that's really interesting about this transition and what you're seeing right now with data centers, that initially it was the connectivity that brought the data center to the place. Now it's the power and you have all these powered land folks. And you have a bunch of these kind of new entrants into that data center space from the real estate side, certainly from the construction and engineering side. And you really got to see it, both sides of it, how to kind of apply a data center mindset to a construction company, and how to apply kind of a construction mindset to a data center company. And then you have, a bunch of utilities that are trying to figure out, what language data centers are speaking, and then everything in between. So I guess the age-old question is it easier to teach a construction guy how a data center works, or to teach a data center guy how to construct something?
I think it's equally hard on both. It's equally hard, but when you add the networking piece into it, that's when you blow the fuse.
It's just two cups and a string, Tony. Come on.
It's the latency piece, it's the peer and on-ramp piece, it's the ISP piece. It's that piece, I think, is what makes it.
And I'm struck by, like, when you started describing what the use case is for what you guys are developing, you really got into the nitty-gritty of the kind of the AI tokens and how the various processors work and the queries and all that. So how does that play in? How does a nuclear Navy sub guy start talking about, AI Blackwell processors, quoting Jensen on a first name basis, etc.?
Me and Jensen are like this, man. I
don't see the other finger. All I saw you is give Jensen
all the
finger.
time. The Navy is interesting, especially the submarine force, because you do have 14 megawatts of IT load. So you kind of understand how the platform acts. So I thought I was just a facility guy coming out of the Navy, but I kind of understood how networking is, or, how containers work, how the processors work, how everything kind of fits together. And so I think that's kind of the path. The data centers are cool to me, but I think the solution architecture is also really interesting to me. How all the pieces, how do the servers, how does the network, how does the platform that runs on top of it fit in? And that's how I think I kind of get into this. I would never be able to sell a module or lease a module if I was just by myself. Most of these times, we're talking with Dell or HPE or WWT or Supermicro. We're talking to the network side like Colt or KDDI. So it ends up being a turnkey solution, and we might be subbed under on someone else's paper, or each one might have their own little cost to it. But we are finding very few people who just say, build me a module. It's more, hey, we had this idea of this need. Can you help us out? And you have to bring all the pieces and parts and do it. I think that's been interesting.
Ultimately, they're spending millions of dollars, if not more than similar to what they're spending on the data center. They're spending on the equipment that's going inside that data center, right?
Exactly. And you can ask them the questions like, where are you going to be in 2 years? What do you need to do when, you have to replace these hoppers in a year if you really want to be up that tight end? What are you going to charge? How can we lower this cost? Do you really need to get N+1 or 2? And so you're able to bring all that kind of stuff in, and everything we're doing is Lego blocks, like Nabeel said. And so we've learned a lot from other customers and know what works and what doesn't work. And we try to bring those lessons learned into what customers are, but we're also learning too, like, we're doing a lot of stuff with custom ASICs now. And I've been very surprised at what they're able to deliver compared to a GPU. And the best example I have right now is one we're working with. It's 14 kilowatts a rack. It's about a fourth the cost of a B200, but it does 35,000 tokens per second on a bat size of 128 compared to a B200, which does 15,000. So if I was to actually just put $2 per million tokens, that one makes $2.1 million per year full tilt. On a B200 makes $900,000. So on a rack that's a quarter of expensive, it actually makes more than double the amount of tokens, and that's on a custom ASIC. So I think that's the kind of stuff I think is super interesting. We've been bringing that solution to a lot of people who've been trying to develop their own custom ASICs, and there's plenty of these companies out there. They've already solved the problem. They can provide you the custom ASIC. You just need to put the platform on top of it. You don't have to solve it.
Do you believe that the conversation being moved from facilities and operational teams to IT and finance is changing the dynamics?
I think it's changing the dynamics because I think, at least on the hyperscale, we seem to be following the real estate mindset still a little bit, which is find the cheap land, build a big data center. And I'm not quite sure that's the answer now. I think that was the answer a couple of years ago. That's changing a lot of the decisions right now and where the investors are going and what infrastructure people are trying to invest in. I think that might be delayed though. And I think we might be switching back to technology, which is this network centric architecture of what's going to drive the future, and not necessarily, yes, we're still going to have these hyperscale data centers. I'm not saying that's going away, but I don't think there's going to be as many, and they might be more focused on storage and inference that's not latency sensitive. It's not going to be focused on what the true money driver is going to be, which is definitely a more technology platform focus than it is as a financial focus.
And how about the future of compute? I mean, for the markets that you're servicing, are there discussions for, from a modularity and scalability perspective to convert these assets into operating expenses versus it being a capital expense?
Yeah, I think we get both of them. So we're probably 50-50 now on OpEx and CapEx. You see OpEx people who you want to de-risk. And so we don't know what the future is going to be. And we can easily upgrade our stuff. And let's say we assign a 3-year lease, and, I'll just take up their H100 and drop a GB200 in the same place down the road. It just de-risks everything. But we're seeing some people who, they want to own that capital investment and have it on their books. So I think it's a little bit of both, but we're definitely seeing a lot more people who are interested in de-risking. You saw what Meta did when they're selling back. You can look at it from two perspectives. They're selling back because they've all been working with Blue Owl and that kind of stuff. I look at it as a way to de-risk. Now they can sign a 7-year and walk away if they need to, if the future is not going to be with what they're going to do, and they can free up some of that capital to spend more on chips and everything. So I think it's that balance. But, to me, there's really no point retrofitting anything anymore. Like, why would you take a 4 to 6 kilowatt data center, retrofit it for 40? Because guess what? By the time you're done retrofitting, they're going to be at like a megawatt. So you're better off just dropping stuff in your parking lot. And because, some of these builds are they're small. I think like a 4.8 megawatt is like,
it does not sound like you have a vested interest into
yes,
whether
I have a
people
vested
decide
interest. And
to
yes,
drop something in the parking lot.
but 4.8 megawatts is only 100 feet by 100 feet. And so you're either going to waste a bunch of space in there, and you're going to be really risked, or just build for what you need. We're cracking these things out in 6 to 9 months. And so just build for what you need. Don't overbuild anymore. I think that's going to be the difference.
That's the driver. So, Tony, I mean, you've been at it for a while and you come in from two different perspectives. The thing that we continually forget, but we talk about unintentionally or intentionally for marketing purposes, sustainability and the climate promise to make this planet wonderful. Have you done any study pertaining to modularity, scalability, build-out strategies versus a conventional brick and mortar, build it, they will come, and have all the stranded capacity and efficiency ratios been totally skewed?
I mean, I think a build it and they will come. I don't think you can count on anymore. I mean, yes, there's a need right now, but how much is that need is pent up, years behind, and how much of it is it actually a new need that's kind of coming up? But I also think, to your point, kind of came with sustainability. You brought up that too. I think that is totally hit and miss. I think Europe is super sustainable. I think we in the US, it's more lip service than anything else right now. There are some states you can't get away with it, like the West Coast states. You're going to have to be able to talk about that, but everything else out of that is just lip service. It's secondary to overall cost and return on investment.
And time to market. I mean, right now,
time to market.
We're in a race, right? So when you're in a race, the first thing to go out the window are climate concerns or any of those things, because we just want to win at all costs. And unfortunately, the cost is going to be our grandchildren's future. Oh, well.
But I mean, in Europe, you don't have a choice of that. I mean, they're making you do energy metrics. They're making you track everything on that stuff to apply for that stuff. And I think that's super interesting, because if you design to that, then you can answer.
And you get all of August off.
And you get all August off, and you can work 30 hours a week, and all that kind of stuff.
Here's a question just to you specifically, which is, and maybe we'll allow David to get a word in edgewise. But if you're building all these things for folks that are saying, it needs to be super redundant and N+1, N+2, maybe tier 4 is a thing in the past because that was a lie anyway, but it needs to be tier 3 and we need to have multiple threads, and you're coming to them knowing what it's like to live on a nuclear submarine. Do you ever find it, maybe comical is the wrong word, but cute that they think that their workloads have this, super high uptime requirement when what that kind of literally pressure cooker is like?
Well, if the data center goes down, it's bad for ROI. No one's going to die. And so that's what I think the difference is. And on maintenance on a submarine, if you mess it up, someone's going to die. Maintenance you might drop a rack and, oh, darn, if no one's going to die from that perspective. So I think, unfortunately, that's the difference in operations. But I also think that's how train your teams on that kind of stuff. There has to be some real world implications on how you run your data center, but they have to have a vested interest in it and treat it like, the ship's going to go down. But I mean, we are seeing a lot of moves away from that, though, that N+1 and stuff. Like some of these, they don't care if it goes down. They just want a graceful shutdown. And if it shuts down for an hour, that's fine. If it shuts down for 2 hours, but that's language models. Agentic AI, we're back to high operability, because that stuff is what's making the money. If you want your Tesla not hitting things on autopilot, yes, I know it does. But when you get to the future and hopefully doesn't hit anything anymore, then you don't want your local data centers driving your car to go down, because that could be a safety of life.
Not to mention that when people lose connectivity, they're more likely to murder people.
or no, they can't murder because they can't think for themselves without
Exactly.
They're gonna have to dust off and
it's more like Chat GPT. If I want to do this, I mean, you've seen the South Park recently where it's like, write a business plan for me on my turgiddy on.
I'm going to guess a close second to Chris Crosby are the writers of South Park in terms of what informs your daily.
I mean, I think they're poking fun at the right stuff, to be perfectly honest. I think this whole thing we're relying on OpenAI. Like OpenAI, what I think is amazing, it's a probabilistic model. If you were to ask it 50 states, the United States, it has no clue what the United States is. It has no clue what a state is. It's just telling you what you think you want to hear. So
do you think that's just how it is now? Or do you think that there might be a time where AI does develop some level of consciousness or whatever the equivalent is, and then the machines take over, and then it's, Arnold Schwarzenegger coming at you with a bazooka?
I have no clue. I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the near term. I do think you are getting AI right now, which is this agentic machine-to-machine stuff. But here's the funny thing we're not talking about for these data centers. We're talking about GPUs. In a couple of years, they're going to have decomposable infrastructure where basically you're separating your CPU, your memory, your storage with optical. And then we're going to build a data center for that. And then quantum computing is going to be here. And then we're going to build a data center for that. So, I mean,
business is good. Life's good for.
Business is great for business is great for the modular stuff.
Life is great when you can just buy the right Lego for whatever the infrastructure evolution.
Exactly. What has happened, like these 24x multiples and guaranteed revenue for 30 years, I think is a thing of the past now. It's changing too quickly. And yes, we're worried about AI right now, but you will have this decomposable infrastructure next. You will have quantum computing next, and those are going to be the next problems we're going to have to solve. And we're talking in the next 5 to 6 years. The good thing is we're not going to have to worry about fission powering a data center anytime soon. And we're definitely going to have to worry about fusion powering a data center anytime soon. So
Tony, a couple of things. I mean, so one of the points that Phil actually made earlier about computers getting smarter than us, I think it's not that they're going to get smarter than us. The challenge is that we're going to get dumber than them.
Oh no, we rely on that stuff way.
As evidenced by the fact that nobody in my house can kill me because they can't figure out how to do it.
Exactly. You cut off all that Wi-Fi access and you can't do anything.
Exactly. And the one question that Phil asked earlier about the tier levels as it entails to uptime, IDCA, and others for that matter with their tier rating. Do you think as we move forward that tier rating at the facility levels is probably not as important as it would be at the application stack? Or is that the move that we need to move to?
I think it's at the application stack. I think it's when you're building this much distributed compute, I think it's at the application stack and not necessarily at the data center level. I mean, to be honest, I haven't been asked what tier level we designed to for the last 2 years. No one's asked me at all about that. In fact, I'm the one going, do you want it concurrently maintainable or do you not want to? What does that mean? Do you want a maintenance bypass? Do you want a maintenance bypass? Or you want A and B? Why do you want A and B? Like, it's like those concepts aren't even coming up anymore. At least could definitely probably coming up in some form or fashion with big data centers and that kind of stuff. But what we're doing, I haven't been asked in a long time.
And I suggest that we make the maintenance bypass just a standard.
Yes.
Yes.
I will say UPSs, put the stupid maintenance bypass in your UPS. Don't make me spend $20,000 to add a stupid switch on to your stupid UPS. Just, yes.
Oh, Tony's getting upset again.
Add it in there.
This disparagement of technology needs to stop.
Which, and it's $20,000. $20,000 for a stupid maintenance. Come on. Sorry.
It should be a part of it. On that note, that leads into like a theory that I've always had at least for the last 2 decades, that the physical layer is going to be commoditized to the degree that it wouldn't really matter where is the data center or whose data center it is, because everything is going to happen at the application stack.
No, 100% agree. And we are seeing that with some of these applications that people are putting out there right now. And they're designed that way that it is at the application stack, and it's less when you deploy 10,000 sites. It's not at the data center level. I mean, one of those can get out, and it's going to have a backup. So I agree 100%. It's going to be at the application layer.
Does that point data centers become irrelevant? I mean, are we going to be like just simple like gas stations that no one's going to look at, no one's going to care? We just go in, pump gas, and leave.
Aren't we already that though? We're kind of like just this.
The only thing we're missing are the powdered donuts.
Exactly.
Tony, I would like to go back to an earlier comment you made about how while you were at Compass and telling people that you were working on edge data centers, they kind of dismissed, or there's sometimes a dismissive attitude. Of course, we know that the way that technology evolves, it often starts out as being sort of a curiosity or novelty. YouTube was originally thought of as a place where you could watch cat videos, and then it turns into something that completely swallows up the legacy industry. Why were people dismissive of edge data centers a few years ago?
It wasn't making money. It all comes down to what makes the money. Edge wasn't making money. There was no application that needed an edge. Nothing was necessarily latency sensitive. This stuff just wasn't there, but you are starting to see applications now that do make money, that are latency sensitive, that are edgy, in what they're talking about. And it just nothing was making money on it. So no one really wanted to talk about it. It's not cool or fun to talk about things that make sense, because that doesn't make the news. I was like the sideshow, like the 2-headed person. I was like here's Tony with the edge. Like, let Tony jump up and down. Let him talk edge. But there was no way to make money on it, and there were plenty of businesses that had failed. And so it was just, hey, Tony's just doing another business that will ultimately fail, just like the long line of edgy kind of businesses that were out there.
I like the phrase, nobody likes to talk about things that make sense because they only like to talk about the things that make dollars.
Yes.
We should.
That's brilliant. I think that needs to be copyrighted.
So you come out of the Navy, you went from the Navy. Oracle was your first entry into it was not?
Yeah, Meta, Facebook
Meta.
was.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So Meta to Oracle. Around what year was that? Like when you got out of the Navy?
2016. So 2016 to 2018 was Meta.
You have been in this industry
for 9 years.
For 9 years. I have been in this industry 3 times longer than you.
3.5.
So thank you. To what do you credit your ability to have such a rise in terms of the visibility of your platforms? I mean, Meta as a starting point is amazing, right? Not everybody can just decide to start their digital infrastructure experience and say, you know what, I'm just going to go work for Meta because why not?
I got lucky there.
Is it a particular characteristic that you have where this stuff interests you? Is it that kind of nuclear submarine training that just was a perfect fit, which is why we see like a pipeline of talent coming in from, that element of military service, among others?
I mean, I think I'm a super technical nerd. I like to know how things operate. I was building my own computers back in the day, and I like to go deep on how that kind of stuff work. And it was more than just, the mechanical electrical piece. It was, what's the capacitor, how they're built, how's the chipset build, how's the memory interact with that. So then you add in the nuke in me, which is to question everything and think everything is BS and to, give my opinion on everything. But I think there's a lot of us out there. I think I just got super lucky.
I was on a panel once, and it was years ago. It was before this current moment that we're in. And someone asked me why I thought it was so delayed that nuclear power was going to take hold and grow in the U.S. And my answer on that panel was, as long as the most popular nuclear technician in the United States is Homer Simpson, no one is going to trust the nuclear way of life. Now, tongue in cheek, of course, Homer Simpson is a fictional character who's not really eating donuts on the job. But
I ate donuts.
I'm sure you do, and probably sneak into bushes and out of them. But you actually operated a nuclear powered, basically a floating nuclear power plant.
Yes.
And we are submerged. It wasn't even floating.
I had to sign for it. Right. I had to sign for it when I took over. I signed for a core.
So we're in a moment where people are talking about SMRs. Nuclear is having a moment, not just within the US, but globally. So as someone, the only person in any of these conversations that has actually operated a submerged nuclear power plant, what do you think of those technologies? Do you think they're needed, real, a part of the overall solution, or do you think the moment is going to pass them by where the demand is going to change?
I think they're definitely needed. I am worried that the nuclear is going to get a bad name when all these Gen 4s who promised delivery in a couple of years never happen. And that's what worries me, is everyone's going to have this backlash against nuclear saying, oh, they promised they could do this and they can't do it. And there's no way they will do it. We've forgotten what it actually takes to build a nuclear power plant. You have to come up with a design. You have to get that design approved. You have to build a test reactor. You have to run said test reactor for 2 years to get data. You have to submit a final design to NRC. NRC looks through yours. They give you permission, and you have to build a reactor. We've taken 30 years to build reactors that we actually knew the design for. None of this has changed. Like, it doesn't matter. If you really want an SMR quickly, you would build a Gen 3 or Gen 3 Plus, something we know about. Pressurized water reactor, whether it's a Westinghouse or whether it's GE Hitachi, that kind of stuff. And you can blame NRC all you want, but if you've never built your test reactor that demonstrate your design works, why would you ever think you're going to get that? And if you depend on fuel that we can't build right now, unless it comes from Russia, or there's 50 companies fighting over this, kilogram of fuel that comes out every year, like it's not going to happen. And the backlash, I'm really worried, will be against nuclear, and then we'll be back to trying to burn coal and forget about how wonderful nuclear is.
Overpromising.
Yeah, overpromising, they will underdeliver big time. I am surprised we aren't talking about microreactors, though, because microreactors we've been working on for a long time. They are a very simple design. They aren't very complex. Those first ones will be coming out in 2027, and think, 5 megawatt nuclear batteries that never be refueled, and they just sit there for 8 years and you swap them out. Those to me are a very near term thing that we should be talking a lot more about, instead of these SMRs that are probably.
And ironically, the perfect form factor to power an edge data center plugged in your parking lot.
I didn't put that to. Is that? I guess the math.
Amazing.
I guess it does.
Yeah, it does add up.
No, and I'm not saying that just because it's just they've been working on it for a long time. It's a very simple design, where these Gen 4s are very complex designs that require a lot of testing, and no matter what you're using.
Do you think we'll get to fission sooner than SMR and nuclear being streamlined?
I mean, I think we'll definitely doing a lot of these Gen 3 before I think fusion is coming down the road. I just don't know how far. It's very tough to figure out how far we've come. Like, I love the thing a year ago when we had this fusion and everyone was all excited about it, until you actually did the math and realized you put a lot more energy in to make the fusion happen. So you actually lost energy to make it. So I'm glad we did it for that long, but it still lost energy. So, and I don't know how far along we are. It's very tough to read through the lines, and I'm sure people are safeguarding that, their IP, but I would love to see that happen. It makes sense. We should be able to do it.
And in the interim, I mean, do you think there's a play for like hydrogen, geothermal, and other potential?
Oh yeah, I think there's a huge place for that kind of stuff right now. When nuclear doesn't pan out, people are going to start freaking because they made massive builds based on nuclear, and they're going to need something else. And they're going to need geothermal, they're going to need hydro, they're going to need natural gas, all this kind of stuff to be able to fill in what their business plans are going to be. And hopefully these people who are dependent on nuclear have a backup plan when their plans don't hedge out, that they have 100 megawatts by 2028 or something like that.
I want to talk about the kinds of investments that businesses are making in edge computing, basically your customers. I talk to a lot of private equity people, and they say that they are not ready to start putting bets on AI and where AI will take businesses, because they don't yet really have a read on where these businesses are spending their money and investing their money in a way that allows AI to be integrated into their businesses. Do you have insight into that based on the edge data centers that you're installing?
I mean, I think it's still hit and miss on what they're trying to figure out. I mean, I think there's really no good platforms out there. People are starting to put those platforms out there. But I think if you look at China is interesting to me just because they didn't have the good chipsets. So they were actually forced to innovate to make DeepSeek. And because they have that, I think AIs weren't integrating in their day-to-day. Like, they're actually developing platforms that run it. And it's more than just API calls to OpenAI and write my paper for me or something like that. It's actually, I think, a whole list of stuff like they improve traffic, one of their cities, but like 30% using AI and stuff like that. And it's more to day-to-day. And they don't, I think if you were to ask some of the newer generations, they probably laugh at AI right now, because it's just a subscription-based service that old gen people like me like to use to write emails or whatever. They don't see it actually in their day-to-day use at all, unless it's making pictures and all that. And so I think it's, once we make that pivot to actually put it into platforms that actually generate revenue, I think that's when it'll become more interesting, but we're just not there yet. I mean, go look at, if any of us were CEO of OpenAI, we would have been fired. I mean, I don't know any company that could lose billions and billions of dollars and still get a bunch of more money into it and say we need to build bigger. It's just, to me, it's not a winning revenue strategy. Now, I could be wrong, but it doesn't make sense to me at all.
Well, Bezos tried it. I mean, yeah. Bezos was negative for quite some time, and finally
go look at the metaverse. I mean, you can't just throw money against the wall and hope to God some awesome service comes out of it. You actually have to have a platform you're trying to get to, and subscription-based services are not a source of money because they can always cancel your subscription. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all kind of pans out. But I am starting to see platforms, agentic AI platforms, start to happen based on their own models, not based on what's out there, right? DeepSeek is an open source model. Now you're going to give DeepSeek the best chips. They have the best algorithms. What happens when someone releases an OpenAI equivalent that's all open source?
When you are interacting with people who don't know a thing about the digital infrastructure world, data centers, maybe you're at a cocktail party or a backyard barbecue, they ask you what you do and why you like what you do. What do you say?
I just say I do AI things. They look at me and they said, so you help us write emails or something? And I just say yes.
I love it. What do you do for a living? I do AI things.
Yeah, AI things. Emails. Yes.
I just say, I build data centers, the things that hold your servers so you can write your emails and stuff like that. But no one really wants to talk to me about it, because then I'll on the next question, I'll start super nerding out and people just kind of like, oh, there's my friend over there. And then I'm sitting in the corner by myself, mumbling, rocking back and forth.
Our people have a word for that. We call it davening. We were at the Data Center Frontier Trend Summit last week, and we missed you.
Yes, I was helping strengthen our defense worldwide.
Okay. Thank you so much for your service, both in and out of the military. Chris Downey gave the keynote, and he said up until a few years ago, when people asked him what he did for a living, and he told them, their eyes would just glaze over and they would change the subject. Now he says, he's in the data center business, and people come up to him and they congratulate him for being in this business that's so hot and making the front page of all the papers. And look, everyone's understanding of it is, if that, paper thin, right? You can't once you peel the onion, you start crying. There's no doubt. But have you found that, notwithstanding you saying you do AI things, people now, they don't glaze over when you say AI. They say, oh my God, AI.
No, they all say, I have 500 acres. Help me make $1 billion. It's right. Like all the crazies are out there. I'm like, dude, those days are gone. It's like, help me find customers. I have 100 megawatts I can get in 3 years. I'm like, that's great. You have a big dirt lot. That's awesome. I mean, the crazies are coming out of the woodwork right now. All these, people that have bought land and they're trying to turn that into customers, and it's very different than it was. I have a lot of these conversations going. It's different now. Those days might be past, and I'm glad you have a large plot of land, and that's awesome.
Well, they're also pitching the wrong guy, as we've discussed. Tony gets excited about parking lots.
Don't talk to me about that kind of stuff. But it's interesting. But I think people do confuse me with the hyperscale stuff, because then I just say I don't do that, and then they don't get interested because I won't make them millions of dollars.
Awesome. Well, there's so much more to talk about. We'll have to have you back in the future, Tony. But we're going to let you go because you are integral to our national defense, and we want you to get back to your day job. But
we are doing some cool stuff in defense-wise, which I wish I could tell you about, but I can't.
You know what? I've met you long enough to know that after a couple of drinks, you'll tell me anything. That's all it takes.
All right. The next episode will be alcohol mandatory, and we'll.
And when it becomes front page news, we'll just see it the following week on South Park. It'll be great.
It will be on South Park, definitely.
I'm sure.
Awesome. Well, Tony Grayson, President and General Manager of Northstar Enterprise and Defense, Phil Koblence and Nabeel Mahmood, both co-founders of Nomad Futurist. Thank you for being on Cool Vector, and we're definitely going to be talking again. And Tony, we're definitely going to have you back.
No, thanks for having me, and always great to talk, and hopefully I didn't ramble too much.